The train's whistle cuts through the Colorado dust as a black mail-order bride clutches her carpet bag, expecting nothing but hatred from this frontier town. But when the towering cowboy approaches and takes her trembling hand, his weathered voice defies every assumption. Welcome home. The townspeople gather like vultures, whispering cruel bets about how many days before she flees back east, another broken dream swallowed by the unforgiving territory. They see only her dark skin and assume swift failure. But the widowed rancher needs more than a wife. His ranch is dying, his children are lost in grief, and creditors circle like wolves. What none of them know is that she carries knowledge that could save everything, while he holds the power to give her the acceptance she's never known. Will their desperate union survive the forces determined to destroy them both? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The train's brakes screamed against iron rails as it lurched to a stop in Cedar Ridge, Colorado territory. Steam billowed across the wooden platform like ghosts welcoming the unwanted. Josephine Walker stepped down with her single carpet bag, her dark fingers clutching the worn letter that had brought her here. The townspeople gathered without shame, their stares cutting deeper than the mountain wind. She heard the whispered words that followed her kind everywhere. Bets were already being placed on how long she would last. A woman in a faded blue dress nudged her companion. Give her 2 weeks before she runs back where she came from. I say 1 week. Look at her. This ain't no place for her sort. Josephine kept her chin high, though her stomach twisted with familiar dread. She had traveled over 1,000 miles to marry a man she had never seen, carrying nothing but hope and the veterinary knowledge she dared not reveal. Men wanted wives, not women who knew more about healing animals than cooking meals. The crowd parted as heavy boots approached across the wooden planks. Warren surely whispered. "This is Jake and Eleanor," Warren said. "Your new family." Eleanor managed a small wave. Jake's jaw tightened, his loyalty to his dead mother written across his face like a battle flag. The wagon ride to the ranch passed in uncomfortable silence, broken only by the creak of wheels and distant cattle lowing. Josephine noticed how Warren's shoulders tensed when they passed certain sections of fence, how his eyes scanned the horizon like a man expecting trouble. The McAllister ranch spread before them like a broken promise. The main house sagged under the weight of neglect, its paint peeling like sunburned skin. Fences needed mending, and the barn door hung crooked on tired hinges. But it was the cattle that made Josephine's trained eye narrow with concern. Even from a distance, she could see animals moving with the sluggish gait of sickness. Their coats lacked the shine of health, and several lay in the shade with the stillness that preceded death. Her fingers itched to examine them, to apply the knowledge Dr. Harrison had taught her during those long years in his St. Louis practice. Warren helped her down from the wagon, his touch lingering a moment longer than necessary. "I know it doesn't look like much right now." Eleanor tugged at her father's sleeve. "Can Miss Walker see Mama's room?" Jake shot his sister a warning glare, but Warren nodded. "If she'd like." The house interior told the story of a family barely holding together. Dust-covered surfaces that once gleamed under a woman's care. The kitchen held the chaos of men trying to manage tasks they had never learned. Eleanor's dress bore stains that spoke of meals prepared by inexperienced hands. Warren showed her to a small room off the kitchen, clean but sparse. "This was meant to be yours. Sarah's room is upstairs, but I thought you might prefer your own space until you feel comfortable." The consideration in his voice surprised her to offer the help that might save his animals and his livelihood, but the fear of rejection kept her silent. A woman who knew animal medicine was unnatural, unwanted. "I won't lie to you about what you've walked into," Warren continued. "This might all be gone within a month. If you want to leave, I'll understand." The kindness in his offer only made her decision harder. She had come here expecting cruelty and found compassion instead. Now she sat on the secret that might save them all, too afraid to speak the words that could change everything. Outside, a cow lowed in distress, the sound carrying the weight of approaching disaster. Dawn brought the sound of another cow collapsing in the east pasture. Warren's boots thundered across the porch as he ran toward the animal, desperation written in every stride. Josephine watched from the kitchen window, her coffee growing cold as she witnessed his futile attempts to help the dying beast. 3 more cattle had fallen sick overnight. The McAllister herd was disappearing before their eyes, taking the family's future with each labored breath. Warren knelt beside the fallen cow, his hands shaking as he tried remedies that had already failed a dozen times. Jake emerged from the barn carrying a bucket of water, his young face etched with worry that belonged on a grown man. Eleanor sat on the front steps, tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched her father fight a losing battle. The townspeople had started their cruel countdown. Josephine heard their whispers at the general store, where suspicious glances followed her every move. Marcus Thornton made no secret of his interest in Warren's land, circling the failing ranch like a buzzard waiting for death. Sheriff Reed had warned Warren the night before. "That woman of yours is stirring up talk. Folks are saying she brought bad luck with her." Josephine's secret knowledge burned inside her chest like swallowed fire. She recognized the symptoms plaguing the cattle from her years with Dr. Harrison. The labored breathing, the loss of appetite, the way they separate sleeve. Maybe Miss Walker knows something. She's smart about lots of things. Warren managed a tired smile for his daughter. "Miss Walker came here to be part of our family, not solve our problems." That night, Josephine lay awake, listening to the sounds of sick cattle in the distance. Warren paced the porch until well past midnight, his boots wearing grooves in the wooden planks. The weight of his worry pressed through the thin walls like a physical presence. She rose before dawn and slipped outside while the family still slept. The morning air bit at her skin as she made her way to the pasture where the sickest animals gathered. Her trained eye cataloged symptoms that Warren's desperate love had prevented him from seeing clearly. The cattle showed classic signs of respiratory infection, complicated by poor nutrition. Their feed had likely been contaminated by moisture, creating conditions perfect for disease. Dr. Harrison had taught her to mix a treatment using herbs that grew wild in most territories. Josephine spent the morning gathering plants from the hillsides beyond the ranch. Coltsfoot for the breathing troubles, echinacea to boost their natural healing, willow bark to reduce the fever. Her hands moved with practiced confidence as she prepared the mixture in the barn. The first cow she treated lifted its head after drinking the herbal solution. Within an hour, its breathing had improved noticeably. Josephine moved through the herd like a guardian angel, administering doses and checking symptoms with professional efficiency. Warren found her there as the sun reached its peak. She looked up from examining a young steer, her hands still gentle on the animal's neck. The recognition in his eyes told her that her secret was finally revealed. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked. Josephine straightened slowly, dust clinging to her dark skirt. The moment she had feared since stepping off the train had arrived like Judgment Day. "Dr. Harrison in St. Louis. I worked with him for 3 years." Warren's expression shifted through surprise, understanding, while knowing how to save them. Why? The question hit her like a physical blow because the answer revealed her deepest fear. "Because I thought you would send me away if you knew I was more than just a mail-order bride." Warren's laughter rang across the pasture, startling the recovering cattle. "Send you away? Josephine, you just saved our lives." Word of the miracle recovery spread across the territory faster than wildfire. Within 3 days, neighboring ranchers arrived at the McAllister Ranch, seeking the woman who had saved dying cattle with mysterious herbs and gentle hands. Josephine found herself examining animals from sunrise to sunset, her veterinary knowledge finally serving its intended purpose. Warren watched her work with growing amazement. She moved among the animals with natural authority, her hands steady as she diagnosed ailments that had puzzled ranchers for months. The confidence she displayed treating livestock stood in sharp contrast to the hesitant woman who had stepped off the train just weeks before. Eleanor followed Josephine everywhere, fascination lighting her young face as she learned the names of healing plants and watched careful examinations. The girl absorbed medical knowledge like parched earth drinking rain, asking questions that revealed a sharp mind hungry for learning. "Why does this plant help breathing?" Eleanor asked, holding a sprig of coltsfoot. "It opens the airways and reduces inflammation in the lungs," Josephine explained, her teaching voice patient and clear. "Animals and people both benefit from its properties." Jake's resistance crumbled the day Josephine saved his secret project. He had been hiding a sick foal in the far barn, afraid to tell his father about another dying animal. The young horse lay listless and burning with fever when Josephine discovered them together. She knelt beside the foal without judgment or questions. Her hands moved over the small body with practiced skill, identifying the infection that threatened its life. Jake watched in silent desperation as she prepared a treatment from plants he had seen her gathering of ranch management his father had passed down. Their hands touched frequently during examinations, professional contact that carried undertones of growing attraction. Warren's respectful distance gradually shortened as trust built between them, like a bridge constructed one careful stone at a time. The success brought unwanted attention from Marcus Thornton. The wealthy rancher's plan to acquire Warren's land through foreclosure was crumbling as the McAllister herd recovered and multiplied. Thornton's visits to the sheriff's office increased, his complaints about outsiders disrupting established order growing more frequent and pointed. Strange incidents began plaguing the ranch. Fences appeared cut in the morning, forcing Warren and Jake to spend precious hours herding scattered cattle. Supplies mysteriously disappeared from the barn, and horses spooked at shadows that shouldn't have frightened experienced animals. Sheriff Reed arrived one evening as Josephine finished treating a mare with a suspicious limp. His expression carried the weight of uncomfortable duty as he approached Warren near the corral. "Been getting complaints about disturbances," Reed said. "Folks saying unusual activity's been happening since your bride arrived." Warren's jaw tightened with controlled anger. "The only unusual activity is my cattle getting healthy instead of dying. That's what has some people concerned." Asking questions about how a woman learned animal doctoring, Reed's tone suggested he was delivering warnings rather than threats. Might be wise to keep things quiet for a while. Josephine overheard the conversation from the barn doorway. The familiar cold fear settled in her stomach like swallowed ice. She had found acceptance and purpose, only to watch suspicion gather like storm clouds on the horizon. That night, as she prepared evening treatments for the recovering animals, Warren joined her in the barn. The lamplight cast dancing shadows across the hay bales as they worked together in comfortable silence. "Do you regret telling me about your medical knowledge?" Warren asked, his voice careful and measured. Josephine paused in grinding her, said they were looking for someone who matches her description. Eleanor's young voice trembled with worry. "Mrs. Henderson thinks they might be bounty hunters or lawmen." Josephine's world tilted on its axis. Her past was catching up with the new life she had built through careful lies and hidden truths. The sanctuary she had found in Warren's acceptance was about to be tested by forces beyond their control. Warren's hand found hers in the lamplight. "Whatever's coming, we face it together." The stranger arrived at dawn, riding a fine bay horse that spoke of money and purpose. Dr. Jonathan Harrison dismounted at the McAllister Ranch with the careful movements of a man accustomed to respect and deference. His expensive suit and silver-headed walking stick marked him as distinctly out of place among the rough timber and weathered fences. Josephine froze when she saw him through the kitchen window. Her hands trembled as she recognized the man who had shaped her knowledge and then disappeared from her life without explanation. Dr. Harrison had taught her everything about animal medicine, but their relationship carried secrets that could destroy the fragile happiness she had built. Warren emerged from the barn to greet the unexpected visitor. His instincts sharpened as he noted the stranger's measuring gaze and the way his eyes searched the ranch buildings like a man conducting an inventory. "I'm looking for Miss Josephine Walker," Dr. Harrison announced, his educated voice carrying across the yard. "I believe she resides here now as Mrs. McAllister." "We ain't married yet," Warren replied, his tone cautious. "May I ask your business with her?" Eleanor and Jake appeared from the chicken coop, curiosity drawing them closer despite their father's warning gesture to keep their distance. The children sensed the tension radiating from the adults like heat from a forge. Josephine stepped onto the porch, her composed mask hiding the turmoil churning beneath. Dr. Harrison's presence meant her carefully constructed new identity was about to crumble. The man knew truths about her past that could change everything for developments that might destabilize the McAllister family. "Heard you got visitors," Thornton said, his smile carrying malicious pleasure. "Always interesting when folks from the past come calling." Sheriff Reed followed shortly after, his expression troubled as he surveyed the gathering storm of complications. The lawman's loyalty remained divided between maintaining order and protecting the family he had grown to respect, despite his initial prejudices. Dr. Harrison requested a private conversation with Josephine, but Warren refused to leave them alone. His possessive instincts had awakened fully, recognizing a threat to the woman who had become essential to his family's survival and happiness. "Anything you need to say to her can be said in front of me," Warren declared, his stance protective and unmovable. The doctor's revelation struck like lightning, splitting an ancient tree. His words shattered Josephine's carefully maintained secrets and exposed truths that changed the fundamental nature of her relationship with the McAllister family. "Josephine is my daughter," Dr. Harrison announced. "My illegitimate child, but my heir nonetheless." The confession hung in the air like smoke from a devastating fire. Warren's face cycled through shock, understanding, and something that might have been betrayal. Eleanor gasped audibly, while Jake's young features hardened with the suspicion that adults had been lying to him again. Dr. Harrison continued with the relentless precision of a man delivering a medical diagnosis. "Her mother was a free woman of color who worked in my household. I failed them both by not acknowledging the relationship, but I'm here to make amends." Josephine's composure finally cracked under the weight of exposed shame and buried grief. The father who had taught her everything about healing animals had denied her existence for years, allowing society's prejudices to separate them until guilt finally drove him to search for redemption. "I've established a substantial inheritance for you," Dr. Harrison said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of regret. Warren's with surprising compassion. "I'm not here to steal her away, but she deserves to know about her inheritance and make her own choice about the future." Warren felt the familiar weight of loss, settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. Sarah's death had taught him that love could disappear without warning, leaving behind only memories and regret. Now he faced the possibility of losing Josephine to opportunities he could never match. Josephine stood silent amid the chaos, her mind racing through possibilities that seemed to offer no path forward without devastating loss. The night brought no peace to the McAllister Ranch. Josephine sat on the porch steps, watching stars wheel overhead, while the weight of impossible choices pressed down like storm clouds. Behind her, Warren paced the kitchen with restless energy, his boots creating a rhythm of worry on the wooden floor. Eleanor had cried herself to sleep after begging Josephine not to leave them like her mother had. Jake retreated to sullen silence, his young heart already bracing for another abandonment. The children's pain cut deeper than any adult complication. Dr. Harrison had taken rooms at the town's only boarding house, giving Josephine time to consider his offer. The inheritance represented everything she had been denied by birth and circumstance: professional respect, financial security, and the chance to practice veterinary medicine without hiding her knowledge behind feminine deception. Warren finally emerged onto the porch carrying 2 cups of coffee. He sat beside her without speaking, his presence both comforting and heartbreaking. The distance between them felt wider than the vast territory stretching beyond the ranch boundaries. "You have to go," Warren said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "This is the opportunity you were meant for." Josephine's hands tightened around the warm cup. "What if I don't want opportunities? What if I want the life I've already chosen? You can't choose poverty over prosperity for my sake. I won't let you sacrifice your future for a failing ranch and a man who can't provide." Reed arrived as Thornton pressed for an immediate signature. The lawman's expression carried news that darkened an already desperate situation. "Bank wants to see you today," Reed told Warren. "They're asking questions about your ability to meet payments without outside help." The trap was closing with mechanical precision. Thornton had orchestrated the financial pressure while Dr. Harrison's arrival provided the perfect excuse to force Warren's hand. Without Josephine, the ranch would fail within months. Eleanor refused to attend school, clinging to Josephine's skirts like a drowning child grasping driftwood. The girl's desperate pleas echoed through the house as adults discussed futures that excluded her happiness. "Please don't go to the city," Eleanor whispered. "We need you here. Papa needs you." Jake maintained his angry silence but followed Josephine everywhere, his eyes holding accusations and fear in equal measure. The boy had already lost one mother figure, and the prospect of abandonment again threatened to break his young spirit entirely. Josephine found herself torn between competing loyalties and impossible demands. Staying meant accepting poverty and watching Warren struggle with problems she could solve if she possessed her father's resources. Leaving meant abandoning the family she had grown to love for the sake of professional advancement and financial security. Dr. Harrison attempted to ease the transition with practical solutions. He offered to purchase Warren's ranch at a fair price, ensuring the family's financial stability while freeing Josephine to claim her inheritance. The proposal solved everyone's problems except the fundamental issue of separation. "You could visit regularly," Dr. Harrison suggested. "Maintain connections while establishing your practice in St. Louis." Warren's rejection was immediate and final. "I won't be kept by your daughter's charity. Either we make this work on our own terms or not at all." The standoff stretched through a second sleepless night. Townspeople gathered at the general store to speculate about outcomes and place bets on decisions that would reshape acquisition plans. Josephine's mind raced through possibilities that had seemed impossible hours before. Her father's resources combined with her established relationships in Colorado territory offered opportunities that neither staying nor leaving could provide alone. The solution required courage to demand what she truly wanted, rather than accepting the limited choices others had defined for her. She rose from the porch steps with new determination, ready to reshape her destiny on her own terms. Warren watched her stride toward the house with purpose written in every line of her body. Something fundamental had shifted in her thinking, promising changes that could alter everything for better or worse. Josephine entered the kitchen where 3 men waited to hear her decision. Warren sat rigid with contained emotion, while Dr. Harrison studied legal papers with professional detachment. Marcus Thornton lounged against the wall, wearing the satisfied expression of a man counting future profits. She moved to the center of the room with the quiet authority that had developed through weeks of making life-and-death decisions for dying animals. Her voice carried the same steady confidence that had saved Warren's cattle and transformed his family's future. "I have a different proposal," Josephine announced. "Father, I want to use part of my inheritance to establish a veterinary practice here in Cedar Ridge." Dr. Harrison's eyebrows rose with surprise and consideration. A frontier practice would serve the entire territory. The need is certainly established. Warren's expression shifted from resignation to cautious hope. The possibility of keeping both Josephine and her professional skills had seemed impossible until she spoke the words that made it real. Thornton's satisfied smile vanished like smoke in wind. "This territory can't support fancy city medicine. You'll be bankrupt within a year." "Then you won't mind competing with a failing business," Josephine replied, her tone carrying steel beneath silk. The negotiations that followed revealed Dr. Harrison's genuine desire for redemption through supporting his daughter's chosen path. He agreed to fund a fully equipped hope mixed with fear that adult promises might still crumble. "Does this mean you're staying?" Eleanor whispered. Josephine knelt to meet the girl's eyes. "If your father will have me as both wife and business partner." Warren's answer came through actions rather than words. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and took Josephine's hands with the reverence of a man grasping salvation itself. The wedding took place 2 weeks later, under the cottonwood trees that shaded the ranch house. Dr. Harrison performed the ceremony, using authority granted by his medical degree and territorial law. Eleanor scattered wildflowers while Jake stood proudly as Warren's best man. Samantha Mills served as witness alongside Sheriff Reed, whose transformation from suspicious opponent to protective ally reflected the community's gradual acceptance. Even some of Thornton's former supporters attended, drawn by curiosity and the promise of reliable veterinary care for their livestock. The ceremony itself was simple but profound. Warren's vows spoke of partnership and respect, while Josephine promised to build something lasting together. Their words carried the weight of promises tested by crisis and strengthened through adversity. Dr. Harrison's gift to the newlyweds included funding for a modern clinic building and the finest medical equipment available. The veterinary practice opened 3 months after the wedding, serving ranchers from across the territory who traveled days for Josephine's expertise. Warren threw himself into supporting the practice, while maintaining the ranch with help from Jake, whose fascination with animal medicine made him an eager apprentice. The boy's natural aptitude for healing work provided him with purpose that transformed his grief into dedication. Eleanor excelled in the small school that Josephine established for local children, her quick mind absorbing everything from basic reading to advanced mathematics. The girl's curiosity about medical procedures suggested she might follow in her stepmother's professional footsteps. The first year brought challenges that tested their partnership repeatedly. Opportunity. The practice expanded to include training programs for other women interested in animal medicine. Josephine's example opened doors that had seemed permanently closed, creating possibilities for future generations who would face fewer barriers because of her courage. Warren discovered that partnership with a professional woman enhanced rather than diminished his own capabilities. Managing the business aspects of the practice while maintaining the ranch required skills that stretched him in unexpected directions. 2 years after stepping off the train in Cedar Ridge, Josephine stood in the doorway of her clinic, watching Warren teach Jake how to repair fence while Eleanor practiced reading to recovering animals. Her hand rested on her growing belly, feeling the movement of the child who would complete their family. The sunset painted the Colorado mountains in shades of gold and crimson, illuminating the life she had built through courage, knowledge, and the willingness to demand more than the limited choices others had offered. She had arrived with nothing but hope in a carpet bag and found everything she had never dared dream possible.